Thank you, ladies, and Miriam. I want all the women to turn their hearing aids off for a minute. I have a message just for a few men here. Mel and Kurt, Jamie, Dan, Steve Burnson, wherever he is. These roses aren't going to last long. You can come up after church and get, well, maybe there might be enough for a dozen apiece and impress your wife later. Just think about that, guys. Just think about it. Hebrews 6:19 says we have an anchor for our soul, firm and secure. I grew up in a area that had a strong Catholic church. That wouldn't be a surprise to anybody in the Kankakee area. This whole area is a very strong Catholic presence for years. I often heard kids talk about going to catechism. I would hear them talk about the priest and different things, and it was almost a mystery to me, some of the things they talked about. I would see a priest out occasionally outside when you were over by that Catholic church, and usually they had a long flowing robe on. We would see the nuns around town, and they always had the habits on, but I never really understood what a priest did, what their job was. Was it different than a pastor? I was familiar with a pastor. But basically, a priest's job as a pastor was to bring man to God. Standing in the gap between man and God. Taking confessions. Offering hope. Offering forgiveness. It still left a little bit mystery in my mind to what a priest really was, what they did, what they were all about. And years ago, before Marcy, I was a youth pastor in Ferndale, Michigan. And while there, we took our youth through a study of different religions. We took them through Judaism, and we went to a Jewish synagogue on a Saturday with them, and they found that quite fascinating. We took them through some things about Catholicism and what it meant to be a Catholic and different things like that. And we went to a Catholic church on a Wednesday night for a youth service. And a sharp young priest who was visiting there for a youth revival of all things was speaking that night, and it was very impressive. But all the elements of their service were unique to us, and we were not quite sure what all has been going on. Now, in college, I had gone to BVM a couple of times, and some of those other religions just as a part of my training. Anyhow, I had a lot of questions. Our teens had a lot of questions. And so I called the priest that I had originally contacted to bring our teens to that service on that Wednesday evening. And he said, well, let's go out to lunch. You know, let's do lunch, as they say. And so we got together for lunch, and I said, well, I'll pick you up at a certain time. He said, well, come to the rectory and just come on in and ask the secretary for me. I did not know what to expect. I thought, do I dress up and look really nice and professional that day, or should I go normal? I choose to go normal, a nice pair of pants. It was cold weather out. I had a sweater on, but wore my winter coat, and I walked into the rectory, and this lady, obviously a nun behind the desk there, said, can I help you? I said, I'm here to see Father Joe. And she said, oh, okay, just a couple minutes, just have a seat. And I'm sitting down there, and pretty soon, here opens this door, and this guy comes out and says, hi, Greg, I'm Joe. He was dressed just like I was, a nice pair of pants, a nice sweater, but picking up his winter coat so we could go out to lunch. And during lunch, he confessed, I didn't know quite what to expect out of you. Were you going to show up all dressed up, to kill, ready to kill, look like you were fit to kill, or were you going to come casual? And so he said, I decided to go normal. I said, well, thank goodness, I decided to go normal too. And over a period of time, we became friends, and I began to understand the duties of a priest were not unlike those of a Nazarene minister, pastoral duties. Standing in the gap between man and God, leading people to God, listening to their stories, listening to what they needed to have in their lives, and sharing with them and praying with them, and trying to help them make their lives better and more spiritually closer to God. No mystery there at all. As I've gone on down through the years, I've been friends with other priests. I've talked to them, but as I look in the Bible, I find all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we hear this talk about a priest. Now, Hebrews 7, 1 through 3 talks about that priest, Melchizedek. He was the king of Salem, the priest of the Most High God. As I look at that, I'm thinking, wow. He shows up all of a sudden back there in Genesis. Just there he is, Melchizedek, priest of the Most High God, king of Salem, which means king of peace. And so I think about peace. He brings peace to man. And as we talked about peace this morning in Sunday school, and we sang about peace this morning, I'm reminded that there's a peace that only Jesus gives, that only comes from God, that we need. That doesn't mean everything around us is going to be perfect and no problems, but it means that we're going to have peace inside, that we can think clearly and we can get through those times. And so here's this king of peace, the priest of the Most High God, whose name means King of Righteousness. You want to know what righteousness is? Go to the King of Righteousness. He'll explain it to you. He'll get you on the right path for your life. The Bible said that he had no mother, no father, no genealogy, no beginning, no ending. Like the Son of God, like Jesus Christ, he remains a priest forever. Now, if you go back to Genesis 14, you find the whole story. Abraham was going out to rescue his nephew Lot from where he had been kidnapped and everything had been taken from them. And it was called the slaughter of earthly kings. And here he's coming back. He's got all the belongings back. He has Lot and his family with him and everything that was taken away. And all of a sudden, he's met by Melchizedek, who blesses him on the spot. Here's Abraham, the great patriarch, the guy who was still Abram at that point, but was going to be the father of many nations. Melchizedek comes up to him, and what does Abraham do? Oh, hi, how you doing? No. He realizes that this is the King of Righteousness, that this is someone that came from God, and he stops in his tracks and gives the guy 10% of the plunder he took back in the battles. All that stuff that was Abraham's in the first place, he gave to Melchizedek 10%. Now, I could make a big point there about tithing right now, but I'm not going to. Anyhow, Genesis 14:18 says, Melchizedek, the king of Salem, the king of righteousness, brought out bread and wine and blessed Abram on the spot. And then he disappears. He's gone. And we don't hear any more about Melchizedek, period, anywhere else. Now, I've been thinking about this feeling of being blessed. If someone blesses us, it makes us feel good. Friday, I mentioned we had a funeral here at church. I did not know the gentleman, so it was one of those funerals where you meet with the family and you put it together and you come up with it as best you could. I have to tell you, this funeral racked my nerves. Now, even Jesse and Ryan said, "You seem nervous about this funeral." I said, "I don't know why. It's just one of those funerals I feel like I need to share the good gospel message, but yet it's a funeral where they say he had no spirituality about his life at all. He was not a spiritual man." That's what the family told me. And so I came to the conclusion that there was just one of those things that Satan was fighting me, but I needed to drive through and at least leave a good Christian message or Christian witness that Jesus Christ is the way. And there was peace about it. I noticed during the service that the daughter who was sitting right about here kept looking at me and smiling. And the granddaughter and the great-grandkids that were over here, I'm driving Kurt crazy. I'm walking out of the camera range now. They were smiling through the whole thing. But I noticed a gentleman back here. I think I know the guy from somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where. He was very obviously very religious man. He was into everything, and I noticed that he was crossing himself, and he understood a lot of things. I noticed a lady right here. She was right there. And she was smiling through the whole thing, and occasionally saying amen and different things, and that just kept me going all the more. And I noticed that at the end of the service, several people as they walked by said, "Thank you, Pastor. You really blessed us today." That made me feel good because I felt like they blessed me with their kind words. A blessing. Melchizedek blessed Abram. And Abram responded back with his gift, with his worship, with his gratitude. Because somewhere in there, I think he realized that the angel of the Lord had been with him through the whole battle. A blessing keeps us going. It tells us that we're on the right track. Now, I said all that to say this. Jesus is compared to Melchizedek. Hebrews 7, verse 3. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning or days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Jesus. Here's this perfect priest. Jesus is like him. Now, there were other priests in the Bible. There were Levitical priests. They were designated by God to be mediators of God's life and to bring man to God. Jesus was supposed to come from the line of Judah. Yet, he's a priest like Melchizedek. You see, all these other priests that are mentioned in the Bible were human. They had flaws. Melchizedek did not fit the pattern of all the other earthly priests that were going to come along. Jesus is compared to Melchizedek. He did not fit the pattern of the human priest. Jesus is a priest not based on ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. If you look at Hebrews 7:16, I believe it is, one who has become a priest on the basis of a regulation as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. Jesus Christ, an indestructible life. It doesn't mean much to us, but to a Jew who knew the story of Abraham and Melchizedek, this explained a lot to them, to the place of Jesus in their lives. The perfect priest. No beginning, no end. There forever. There for you all the time. Now I want you to ponder on that for a little bit. I want you to put it over here on the right side of your brain for right now. No, I want you to put it over here on the left side of your brain for right now. See, you're backwards to me. I want you to hold on to it for a few minutes. I want you to leave it there. You're going to need that information a little bit later. I want to talk about your soul. Genesis 2:7 says, "The Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." Several places in the New Testament, Matthew and Mark, and in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, it says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength." I see this mind, soul, body connection. My mind thinks. My mind creates these emotions. My mind goes wild at 4 o'clock in the morning when I wake up and I can't sleep, and all this stuff is going through my head. And I can't get my mind calmed down because I want to get up and start the day, but I don't believe in getting up before daylight. My body. Oh, my body. It tries to carry out the actions. It's getting warm up here. Is anyone cold? I need my jacket. I see some of you look like you're shivering. My body tries to carry out the actions that my mind tells it to do. Some days it carries them out better than others. Other days it hurts to carry them out. You understand that? My soul, my spirit connects with God. My spirit, God put inside of me. It connects with God. Mel's trying to cool me down a little bit, putting that on. I have my fan right here, Mel, too, is blowing on me. I just keep getting away from it. My soul. What is my soul? I think about the soul, and I see in Exodus 4, in Genesis 35, the soul is referred to as a person, as the life of a person. John 10 says, Jesus gave his soul, his life, for us to be redeemed. Ezekiel 18 suggests that the soul can die. So I look at the soul, and it's who I am. I look at my mind and my soul, and I wonder. My mind does all this thinking and all this processing, and it's this huge computer that remembers things and pulls things up when I need, and it keeps me going, and it keeps my thoughts going, and it governs what I do and where I go, and if my mind is given over to God, my actions are going to be a whole lot different if I'm not given over to God. And I look at my spirit, and they talk about the spirit leaving the body, and I realize that without the spirit, the body cannot live. And the whole thing gets confusing. Where does my mind and my body and my soul come together? And the college students and other young people tell you, they can sit up all night talking about this stuff and never come to any conclusions. Because it's God who created all of us, and it's confusing. But I look at it, and simply put, my soul is the essence of who I am. I am a person. I'm a people. And that living soul, I'm a living person. Mary, the mother of Jesus, said, my soul magnifies the Lord. Every part of her glorified God because she was totally His. We sing songs about our soul. There's one that some of us like, bless the Lord, O my soul. I will praise you till the evening comes. Now, I want you to put that on the right side of your brain for a little bit. I want you to hold all those thoughts about your soul for a few minutes. You're going to need it later. I want to talk to you about an anchor. There's a lake up in northern Michigan, Houghton Lake. My sister and brother-in-law have a cottage on that lake. We vacationed up there one time when I was about 12 years old. You're familiar with Houghton Lake. Ann might be familiar with Houghton Lake. It's a shallow lake. The depth of that, the maximum depth is 22 feet. So by lakes, it's rather shallow. The average depth is 7.5 feet, and it's 30 miles around. Now, have you ever driven around Houghton Lake? It seems to take 10 years to drive around that thing, doesn't it? Because the speed limits are slow going all the way around that shoreline, and there's all kinds of places to stop and things to look at. You could spend half a day just driving that 30 miles around that. In fact, you could spend all day driving around that thing. And there's spots where it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The problem with that shallow lake is real simple. When a storm comes up, it rocks and rolls. Now, I was about 12. We went on a vacation. We stayed in a cottage on Houghton Lake. On the south side, my grandma and grandpa Swatman went with us. And I remember as we got there looking for the place, well, all of a sudden decided, okay, this is it. And we went down this hill. That's where the cottage was that we had rented for the week. And it was right on the water. And one night, and it included a boat. And my grandfather had brought his little 5-horse motor to put on that boat, so because they love to fish, especially Grandma. I remember sleeping in the living room of the cottage. It had one bedroom, and my parents gave Grandma and Grandpa the bedroom, and they slept on the hide bed in the living room, and my sister and I slept on these 2 pull-out cots, and it had this big, huge picture window that looked out over the lake. I remember waking up early in the morning, or middle of the night, to the flashing of lightning and something banging and crashing, and I remember my dad getting up and saying, "Oh, the boat." And you could see that boat was just rocking back and forth and hitting the dock as hard as it could. And you could see the dock shaking. And my grandfather was awake, and he came out and said, "What is that horrible noise?" And I remember Dad and Grandpa going out in that storm, and my mother and Grandma sitting there holding my sister and I, saying, "Oh, I hope they're going to be okay out there. They better be, hope they don't get hit by lightning." Because you see, they went out to re-anchor the boat, to tie the boat tighter to the dock, so that both of them wouldn't disappear in that horrible storm. Morning came and the boat was there. But I think if they would not have gone out and tied that boat, probably the boat would have been gone, and the dock probably may have been gone as well. The boat needed to be anchored to something very tight so that it wouldn't get rattled around and disappear. I remember another day that I was the anchor. When the district had the camp out here south of Roma Park, we had put a climbing wall in the one end of the old tabernacle. And that climbing wall was, I think, about 30 feet tall. Maybe at least as tall as our sanctuary, maybe a little higher. And we would let the kids go up and down. I remember Alex went up one time, and Karen, he made it to the top. He hit the monkey at the top. That was the goal. Well, we had a group out there. How do I put this? It was a large ladies group. It was a lot of women, okay? And they were out there for a day of recreation and some team stuff together. But one of those ladies was and she wanted to go up the wall. And I was the guy who was supposed to hold the rope while she's going up the wall. Now, a lot of places with climbing walls have a clip in the cement where the person who is doing the anchoring can anchor themselves to that floor. I needed that day. That lady got about 2/3 up the wall, and she started back down. Now, I was about 170 pounds at the time. Not far from that now, but I was about 170 pounds at the time. And as that lady came down, you get the picture? I started going up. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Steve Brack or Brian. One of the guys that was working for us was there behind me and grabbed onto me and pulled me back down. So I was able to slowly let this lady down without catastrophe for both of us. I needed an anchor. I needed something to hold me down, to keep me from just flying off, getting injured, going crazy. You see, an anchor holds a bolt in place. An anchor can hold a human being in place. I saw a video the other day. It showed the best way to exercise. It showed a bunch of people on a treadmill running in a whole line. Here was a guy sitting in a desk chair, with the wheels on it. And he was on that, and the treadmill was going, and he was sitting nice and still in his desk chair, and he had a rope tied from the chair to the front of the treadmill. He was anchored, so he wouldn't go anywhere. So his chair would just go flying off that treadmill. Okay. Hold that anchor right here. Those thoughts right back here, okay? What do you got over here? Thoughts of a priest. What do you got over here? Huh? Soul. Thoughts of a soul. What do you got back here? You're anchored. Okay. Let's put it all together. Take Melchizedek and Jesus and put them right here in the middle of your brain. Now, take the anchor and bring it up here to the middle. Now, shake it all up. Well, how do dogs do that? And mix it together. And here's what comes out. Abraham, in Hebrews 6:13, had been given a promise. He waited patiently for God's promise to come. Verse 13, when God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you. This is God doing this, and give you many descendants. And so Abraham waited patiently, and what happened? Abraham received what was promised. Verse 16, men swear by someone greater than themselves. We are hardwired to worship something or someone greater than us. It's in our DNA. It's in our genes. It's just who we are. It's the way God created us. We have to worship somebody or something. Verse 17. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. Verse 18. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled take hold of the hope offered to us. We who have fled to take hold of the hope offered to us may be greatly encouraged. You see, we can hold on to this hope that Jesus is alive, that Jesus is well. In verse 20, we find this talk about going behind the curtain. In the Old Testament, God was thought to be behind the curtain, and so the priest would go behind the curtain to take the people's sins and sacrifices to God. But now Jesus has gone to God to take our sins and ask for forgiveness on our behalf. And so we see Jesus, like the high priest Melchizedek, is standing in the hope for us. And then here we have verse 19. We have this hope. We have Jesus Christ, what? As an anchor for our soul. It holds us together. It keeps us going when other people disappoint us. It keeps us sane when life falls apart. It keeps us heading towards God when all else seems lost. Our souls can get rattled. Our minds can get confused. We can get so much going on that we can't think what to do next. But when we trust in God, when we pray to Him, our soul gets anchored and doesn't slam against the dock and doesn't go flying up in the air and lose control, because God's in control and He's got our back. We have this hope, an anchor for our soul that's going to keep us together spiritually, together mentally, together emotionally, so we can keep living strong for God. I have a question for you. Will your anchor hold? Is it solid enough to hold in every storm of life that comes along? Join us as we sing that this morning and think about that.
When the storms unfold with their wings of strife. grounded firm and deep in the Savior's love. It is safely moored, will the storm withstand, for 'tis well secured by the Savior's hand. And though the tempest rage and the wild winds blow, not an angry wave shall our bank o'erflow. We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll, fastened to the rock which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Savior's love. When our eyes behold through the gathering night the city of gold, our harbor bright, we shall anchor fast by the heavenly shore, with the storms all past forevermore. We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll, fastened to the rock which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Savior's love.
Well, is your anchor holding? Just have that question this morning. Might just be someone that just says, Pastor, I need prayer this week. I need you to remember me. I need to work on that anchor. Anyone at all, just, Pastor, pray for me this week. I see heads nodding. Yeah. Maybe somebody at home this morning, or somebody listening elsewhere online at one of the care facilities, that just send me a message. Let me know you need prayer. Pastor at eastridgenaz.org. And we'll just pray for you special. Father, as we leave here today, anchor our souls. Keep us firmly grounded in you. Keep us so close to you that nothing can destroy us spiritually. Keep us going for you, Father. Go with us from this place with your guidance, your protection. Thank you, Father, for your amazing grace.